What if the biggest decisions affecting your life weren't made by you? At least, not this version of you. What if somewhere in a parallel reality running right alongside this one, another version of you made a choice, and you're still living out the ripple effects today? It sounds like science fiction or maybe spiritual fantasy. But stay with me. Have you ever felt strangely drawn to a person you barely know? Or faced a life pattern that just keeps repeating no matter how much inner work you do? What if that feeling, that pattern, isn't just yours? What if it belongs to another you, a version that exists in a reality just outside your perception? Today, we're exploring a mind-bending idea that you may have signed a soul contract in a parallel reality, one that is still energetically binding you, right here, right now. And here's the kicker. You don't have to consciously remember it for it to affect you. So the question is this: can your current life be shaped by decisions made by a version of you that you've never even met? Let's peel back the layers of reality, of time, and of identity to find out just how deep this rabbit hole really goes. Because the version of you watching this might not be the only one listening. Before we get into parallel timelines and other versions of you, we need to understand what a soul contract actually is. A soul contract is a metaphysical agreement, one believed to be made before we're born into this life. The idea comes from ancient spiritual teachings, including those found in Hinduism, certain branches of mystic Christianity, and New Age thought. According to these traditions, before you incarnate into a physical body, your soul meets with spiritual guides, higher beings, or even other souls, and chooses key experiences to encounter: challenges, relationships, opportunities, and lessons. The purpose? Growth, evolution, a deeper remembering of who and what you truly are beyond the physical form. Unlike legal contracts, soul contracts aren't made with ink and paper. They're energetic. They're encoded into the vibration of your being. Think of them like agreements embedded into the architecture of your life path. You may agree to encounter heartbreak, betrayal, illness, or moments of intense joy, not as punishments or rewards, but as catalysts for awakening. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people think these soul contracts are locked into the pre-birth realm only, that they're drafted once before you enter this world and then you live them out. But what if that's only part of the picture? What if soul contracts aren't just made in the before life, but are also being made by other versions of you in parallel realities? Imagine this: there isn't just one you moving through a single lifetime. Modern quantum theory and many spiritual systems suggest that reality may be multi-layered, with infinite timelines branching off from every choice, every possibility. In this view, you exist not as one static self, but as many, each version living out a different strand of experience. Each of those versions has its own motivations, its own emotional landscape, and its own soul contracts. In other words, you could be dealing with the effects of two or more overlapping agreements, some made by this version of you and some made by a parallel you who took a different path. These parallel contracts aren't just theoretical. They may manifest as emotional triggers you can't trace, recurring patterns that seem out of place, or even uncanny relationships that carry the weight of something unresolved. You're not imagining it. There might actually be an energetic thread running through the many selves of you. That's because the soul isn't linear. It's multidimensional. It expresses itself through layers of experience, not all of which are confined to this timeline. A contract made by one layer of you, out of love, fear, curiosity, or sacrifice, could still be echoing across dimensions. And that echo could be the thing pulling your strings without you even realizing it. So the next time something feels karmic, heavy, or strangely fated, don't just ask what you signed up for. Ask what you did. To really grasp how a soul contract from another version of you could still be shaping your life, we need to understand the concept of parallel realities. Let's start with what science says. In quantum physics, there's a theory known as the many worlds interpretation. It suggests that every decision, every possibility, creates a branching timeline, a new version of reality where the alternative outcome plays out. For example, in one reality, you took that job offer. In another, you didn't. Both outcomes exist, but in different streams of time. Now, let's take that further. What if you exist in all of them? This is where metaphysics meets modern theory. Many spiritual traditions, from Tibetan Buddhism to Gnostic Christianity, have hinted at the idea that the soul is not confined to one lifetime, or even one body. It's a field of consciousness that spans dimensions, time frames, and planes of existence simultaneously. In other words, your soul is expressing itself in many timelines at once. Each of these expressions is a different you, living a different version of your life. These aren't clones or simulations. They're full-spectrum versions of you, making choices, experiencing consequences, and evolving in their own way. And just like you, they're entering into agreements, soul contracts that guide their paths. But here's the twist. The boundary between these versions of you is not as solid as we've been led to believe. Energetically, the soul doesn't separate cleanly between timelines. Think of it more like light shining through a prism. The different rays represent different versions of you, but they all come from the same source. That means there's potential for resonance, an energetic connection that allows experiences in one timeline to subtly influence another. So when a parallel you makes a binding soul-level agreement, say, to carry the emotional burden of a past life or to stay in a relationship for the sake of growth, that agreement might create a kind of vibrational imprint. And that imprint can bleed into your timeline, affecting you in ways that don't make logical sense. You might feel drawn toward certain people or places for reasons you can't explain. Or you may carry fears, habits, or compulsions that seem to have no origin in your life story. These could be the echoes of parallel contracts, agreements made by another version of you, still connected to your soul through a web of subtle energy. This isn't just about imagination or fantasy. It's about realizing that identity is layered, reality is stacked, and your life is more than the story you remember. Now, let's take this deeper. If there are other versions of you in parallel realities, and they're forming soul contracts too, what exactly makes those contracts binding in your life? To answer that, we need to look at how energy actually works. In modern physics, there's something called non-locality. It means that energy and information can be shared between particles across vast distances instantly without any obvious connection. This principle breaks the rules of time and space as we understand them. It's the same concept behind quantum entanglement, but we'll get to that in the next section. The takeaway here is this. Energy doesn't need to be physically close to have an effect, and that applies to the soul, too. Just because a soul contract was made in another timeline doesn't mean it's limited to that version of you. The soul is like a central hub connected to all its branches, every version of you, across every timeline. When one version enters into a powerful agreement, especially one involving pain, love, sacrifice, or fear, that energy can resonate across the entire system. This is where things get strange and deeply personal. Have you ever felt an unexplainable pull towards someone as if you've known them forever? Or faced a recurring challenge that seems completely out of proportion to your life experience? Maybe it's a fear you've never been taught, or a craving you've never understood. These could be symptoms of a contract made by another you, a soul-level agreement that's still rippling through your energy field. Because contracts aren't just decisions, they're energetic bonds. And those bonds don't always respect the borders of time and space. In fact, the stronger the emotional charge behind the contract, the more likely it is to bleed through. Love, grief, guilt, devotion. These emotions act like frequencies, cutting across dimensions. If a parallel version of you made a vow, or formed a pact, or carried a burden that was left unresolved, you might still be holding it. For example, you're irresistibly drawn to someone who feels both familiar and tragic, like an unfinished story. You face a challenge over and over again, even though you've done the work and healed the wounds. You have moments of sudden heaviness, emotion, or obsession that don't feel like you. These aren't random glitches. They may be echoes of energetic agreements you never consciously made, but your soul did somewhere else. This doesn't mean you're trapped. It means you're connected. And that connection, once understood, can become the key to not just understanding your patterns, but transforming them. Because just as contracts can bind, they can also be rewritten. Now that we understand how parallel contracts might affect your life, let's explore how that's even possible. The answer may lie in one of the most mysterious principles in quantum physics: entanglement. In simple terms, quantum entanglement occurs when two particles become linked in such a way that the state of one instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. Einstein famously called it spooky action at a distance. But what does this have to do with you? Think of every version of you across parallel realities as energetically entangled. You're not just metaphorically connected, you may be literally resonating on the same frequency across dimensions. These versions of you share a common source: your soul. And while your minds may be separate, your essence is shared. This means that shifts in one timeline don't stay confined to that timeline. They send ripples across the entire system of you. When one version of you evolves, heals, breaks a contract, or makes a significant soul-level decision, that change doesn't just disappear, it echoes. It moves through the energetic web that links all of your selves. Let's take this even deeper. In spirituality, we talk about the idea of resonance. It's the principle that like frequencies attract and influence one another. Imagine a set of tuning forks. When one is struck, others nearby may begin to vibrate, not because they were touched, but because they resonate with the frequency. Your soul works the same way. If a parallel version of you is locked in a contract based on grief, fear, or loyalty, it may be vibrating at that frequency, and your current self, sharing that soul signature, begins to echo it without knowing why. You might feel sudden guilt that doesn't belong to your life, or hold on to loyalty towards someone who never earned it, or self-sabotage repeatedly, despite your best intentions. It may not be your trauma, your vow, or your promise, but if it's resonating within your shared soul field, it feels like yours. And until it's recognized, it can guide your choices in quiet, invisible ways. Now flip the script. What if you consciously chose to shift your vibration? What if you became the one who forgives, releases, or reclaims power? That action could send a ripple backward or sideways through the web, affecting not just you, but other versions of you who are still trapped in outdated patterns. This is where science and spirit begin to meet, a web of entangled selves, all capable of influencing one another across dimensions. Not through force, but through resonance. You're not separate. You're a symphony of selves, vibrating in different keys, and every note you choose to play can change the music for all of you. But this concept isn't just modern. In fact, ancient spiritual systems may have understood this long before quantum theory ever existed. Let's explore those next. Long before modern physics gave us words like entanglement and parallel realities, ancient spiritual systems were already pointing to something remarkably similar. In Vedic philosophy, for example, there's the concept of lokas, multiple realms of existence, each vibrating at different levels of consciousness. These lokas aren't stacked in some vertical heaven and hell scheme. They coexist, interpenetrate, and reflect varying states of awareness. A single soul in this worldview can have expressions or presences in multiple realms at once. Sound familiar? The Kabbalistic tree of life also hints at this idea. It maps out layers of reality, from the most physical to the most divine, all interconnected by energetic pathways. These aren't just symbolic, they represent actual planes of existence, where aspects of the soul operate simultaneously. In Kabbalah, the soul is not whole unless it's aware of its many parts, even the ones scattered across dimensions. And then there's Hermeticism, with its foundational principle: as above, so below; as within, so without. This phrase isn't just poetic. It reflects a deep understanding that the microcosm and macrocosm mirror each other, that your inner world contains the structure of the entire universe. And if that's true, then it follows that your individual soul may contain and reflect multiple realities at once. These systems didn't use words like quantum field or multiverse, but the essence was there. Reality is layered. The self is multidimensional, and the boundaries between timelines are far more fluid than they seem. Even ancient Egyptian mysticism spoke of the Ba and the Ka, two aspects of the soul that could travel beyond the body, interact with divine realms, and reunite with other soul fragments across space and time. In shamanic traditions, practitioners often engage with what they call spirit doubles, or dream selves, which are essentially alternate versions of the same soul operating in parallel realities. So when we talk today about a soul contract signed in another dimension still affecting your life, we're not inventing a new belief, we're recovering a forgotten one. These ancient teachings suggest that what we call you is really a complex network of selves, all woven together by the higher intelligence of the soul. Some of those selves may still be carrying out vows or obligations. Some may be wounded. Some may be empowered. And the spiritual task? To integrate them, to realize that healing here could lead to freedom elsewhere, and vice versa. The soul isn't a single story, it's a library, and soul contracts may be the binding threads that hold certain chapters together, until you choose to edit, rewrite, or close the book. So how do you free yourself from a soul contract you don't consciously remember, and one that might not even belong to this version of you? The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to the signs. Not everything difficult in your life comes from trauma, poor choices, or bad luck. Sometimes the persistence of a pattern, the way it loops back again and again, signals something deeper, something energetic. Here are a few clues that a parallel soul contract might be influencing your current life. You feel chronically out of sync, like your life doesn't fully fit, no matter how hard you try to align it. You carry intense emotions or compulsions that seem disproportionate or rootless. Guilt, loyalty, fear, or even love that has no logical source. You hear inner guidance or intuition that feels non-local, as if coming from somewhere both familiar and foreign. These are not just quirks of imagination. They might be transmissions, echoes of other timelines trying to resolve something through you. So what can you do about it? One powerful tool is shadow work, not just in the traditional psychological sense, but across timelines. Set the intention to connect with the parts of you that live elsewhere, the versions still holding pain, repeating vows, or fulfilling outdated agreements. Ask them what they need. Often, they just need to be seen and acknowledged. You can also use meditation as a portal. Go into stillness and visualize stepping into another version of your life. Trust what comes up. Engage with that self. Ask questions. Offer forgiveness. Offer freedom. You're not pretending. You're initiating a dialogue with another expression of your own soul. Another practice is rewriting contracts. This can be as simple as speaking aloud. I release any agreements made by any version of me that no longer serve my highest good. Energy responds to clarity. The more conscious you are of your intention, the more powerfully the web begins to shift. But most importantly, reclaim your energetic sovereignty. Remind yourself that you are not bound by unconscious agreements, especially ones made in fear, guilt, or survival. You are a co-creator of your reality, and that power extends beyond the limits of this timeline. You're not just healing yourself here, you're liberating other versions of you, ones you may never meet in this lifetime, but who are still part of the same soul song. You didn't just sign a soul contract before entering this life. Somewhere, right now, other versions of you are doing the same in realities you can't see, but deeply feel. The patterns you can't explain, the pulls you can't ignore, the emotions that don't quite belong to this life. What if they're echoes, not of past mistakes, but of soul-level promises made by a parallel you? But here's the empowering truth. Just as those contracts can affect you, your awareness can affect them. Your healing, your intention, your clarity, it sends ripples across timelines. So instead of asking, "What did I agree to back then?" ask, "What am I agreeing to now?" Because the real contract, the one with the most power, is the one you choose in this moment. You don't need all the answers, just a willingness to explore, and maybe that gentle nudge you feel. It's another version of you, hoping you'll finally listen. If this speaks to you, then somewhere, across dimensions, another you just exhaled.